Right, thank you, Sharon. Now, moving on, the Supreme Court has consolidated 7 petitions challenging President-elect William Ruto's victory in the just concluded general election. While making the ruling during the status conference on Tuesday, the 7-judge bench led by Chief Justice Martha Koome stated that the various petitions raised similar issues. Azimio Umoja One Kenya presidential candidate Raila Odinga, who is the main petitioner seeking to overturn Ruto's win, is being represented by senior counsels James Orengo, Philip Mulgor and Paul Mwangi, among others. On the other hand, Ruto's win is being defended by senior counsel Fred Ngatia, Professor Kindiki Kithure and Kioko Kilukumi, among other lawyers. The Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission chairperson Wafula Chebukati's defense is being led by former Attorney General Githu Muigai and lawyer Eric Ngumbo.
So the other issue that we are going to deal with this morning.
The Supreme Court of Kenya on Tuesday kicked off the pre-trial conference of the presidential election petition to formulate timelines, issues to be discussed and determined in the main trial.
The court, having considered the pleadings that were filed, the submissions, and all the documents that were filed, we have framed 9 issues that have been shared with you by now, I believe, but I'll read them out.
The conference held at the Apex Court Sub-Registry at the Milimani Law Court comes 8 days after petitions challenging the presidential elections results were filed. At the beginning of the activity, the Supreme Court dismissed a number of petitions and also allocated time to each party to address the court.
Direction number 2. Representation of the IEBC. After the various petitions were filed and served on the IEBC, and the chairman of the IEBC, Wafula Chebukati, appointed counsel to represent him. The firm of Issa and Company Advocates lodged a notice of appointment of advocates that is dated the 26th August 2022, purporting to act for the IEBC. At the pretrial conference this morning, the issue of the legal representation arose. The IEBC, through the firm of Iseme Maema and Kamau Advocates, filed an application on the 29th of August 2022 seeking to strike out the notice of appointment and all pleadings by Issa and Company Advocates. The motion was supported by an affidavit filed and deponed to by Marjan Hussein Marjan, the Secretary and Chief Executive Officer of the IEBC. We have now been called upon to give directions and to resolve the question of legal representation of the IEBC. We have considered the pleadings, the record, and the brief statements by counsel. It's our considered view that this court cannot deal with the issue or any dispute as to the legal representation of the IEBC as an institution in these petitions. It is not the business of the court to determine who represents the IEBC in whichever formation. There is an internal issue which must be resolved by the IEBC.
The Supreme Court has now issued a draft of issues for determination in the presidential election petition, and that will be considered by the parties in the pre-trial conference. They include: number 1, whether the technology deployed by the IEBC for the conduct of the 2022 general elections met the standards of integrity, verifiability, security, and transparency to guarantee accurate and verifiable results. Also, whether there was interference with the uploading and transmission of Forms 34A from the polling stations to the IEBC public portal, and whether there was a difference between Forms 34A uploaded on the IEBC public portal and the Forms 34A received at the National Tallying Center and Forms 34A issued to the agents at the polling stations, and whether the postponement of gubernatorial elections in Kakamega and Mombasa counties, parliamentary elections in Kitui Rural, Kacheliba Rongai, and Pokot South constituencies and electoral wards in Nyaki West in North Imenti constituency and Kwanjenga in Embakasi South constituency resulted in voter suppression. Also, whether there were unexplainable discrepancies between the votes cast for presidential candidates and other elective positions, and whether the IEBC carried out the verification, tallying and declaration of results in accordance with Article 138, Sub-Article 3, Part C, and Article 138, Sub-Article 10 of the Constitution, and whether the declared presidential-elect attained 50% plus one vote of all the votes cast in accordance with Article 138, Sub-Article 4 of the Constitution, and whether there were irregularities and illegalities of such magnitude as to affect the final results of the presidential election, and lastly, what reliefs and orders can the court grant or issue?
Is whether the technology deployed by IEBC for the conduct of the 2022 general elections met the standards of integrity, verifiability, security, and transparency to guarantee accurate and verifiable results. Issue number 2, whether there was interference with the uploading and transmission of Forms 34A from the polling stations to the IEBC public portal. Issue number 3, whether there was a difference between Forms 34As uploaded on the IEBC public portal and Forms 34As received at the National Tallying Center and Forms 34As issued to the agents at the polling stations. Issue number 4, whether the postponement of gubernatorial elections in Kakamega and Mombasa counties, parliamentary elections in Kitui Rural, Kacheliba, Rongai, and Pokot South constituencies, and electoral wards in Nyaki West in North Imenti constituency, and Kwanjenga in Embakasi South constituency, resulted in voter suppression to the detriment of the petitioners in petition number E005 of 2022. Number 5, whether there were unexplained discrepancies between the votes cast for presidential candidates and other elective positions. Issue number 6, whether the IEBC carried out the verification, tallying, and declaration of results in accordance with the provisions of Article 138(3)(c) and 138(10) of the Constitution. Issue number 7, whether the declared president-elect attained 50% plus one vote of the votes cast in accordance with Article 138(4) of the Constitution. And number 8, whether there were irregularities and illegalities of such magnitude as to affect the final result of the presidential election. And finally, what reliefs and orders can this court grant or issue?
For Maisha Prime, Maisha Television, I'm Bishabi Jr.